Memory Talker, a side character in a class, tries to stand up to a bully only to find himself in a world of pain, but was saved by whom seemed to be a class leader, Kirihara Takuto. Toka's courage seemed to have won over the sympathy of Sugoi Ayaka, who is the class president. Whilst these events were happening, in an instant all the passengers of the bus were teleported to a chamber and they feasted their eyes on a beauty, who went by the name Goddess Visicious of the Kingdom of Alien. Whilst the students mutter in confusion as to what's going on, the goddess explains about how her kingdom has been invaded by the Demon Empire and requires the help of them and addresses the students as heroes. Takuto seems unimpressed and questions why they have any obligation to help her fight a demon empire, and this is when the goddess explains that there is no other way of returning back to their world. She explains that a reverse summoning ritual requires an element known as the Demon King Essence, and the only two ways of obtaining it was via the heart of the Demon King, and the other was to defeat the Demon King and collect the essence onto her necklace. Ayaka humbly questions the goddess as to how some school children are able to assist her in defeating a Demon King and his empire. The goddess reveals that they all have powers and performs a gruesome murder in which a beast rips apart a human. However, the beast is effortlessly destroyed by the goddess. Some students are agonized by this cruel sight, while others are intrigued to find out how much power that they have in themselves. An item called the appraisal crystal displays how strong each person is, and they are divided into ranks ranging from S tier to E tier. In the class, there were a total of 3 S ranks including Takuto and Ayaka, but the light that presented the most mystery was that of another student whom was classified as the Dark Hero, the strongest amongst everyone. A simple voice command showed everyone their stats, which comprised of stuff like health, attack, defense, stamina, and magical power. The higher the rank would result in having higher stats. Memory, having the lowest stats out of everyone, seemed to be the weakest present. Toka's unique skills were to paralyze, sleep, and poison his enemies, which later proved the most common and the weakest. The teacher who once held control over the students were now cast aside by the students who outranked him severely. But the goddess wasn't done yet, as she announced that there was one more ritual to conduct and asked the weakest to step out, Memory Toka. The goddess explains that previously the weakest heroes have been a burden to the strong ones, and that after a while they decided on setting a trial for them. The hero would be teleported to a set of ruins, and if they managed to reach the surface, then they would be allowed to rejoin the group, no questions asked. The ruins that no one has ever escaped, and appropriately named the Ruins of Disposal. Toka desperately tries to plead his case and gets ridiculed by the goddess due to his lack of potential and abilities. The other classmates have now entirely forgotten about him and are more than happy to sacrifice him, and the goddess chucks him his unique item, which is a leather bag that seems like it serves no purpose. Ayaka tries to reason with the goddess to not perform this death sentence, but she is knocked unconscious by the goddess. Toka, consumed by hate and powerlessness, attacks the goddess in a desperate attempt. However, the attack doesn't even leave a mark in her barrier. Takuto tests his power, which could have collapsed the entire chamber, but the whole class immediately starts mocking and reminding Memory that he is nothing more than a side character. A flashback shows a younger Toka being told to show the world the actual monster that he is, and right before being teleported, Toka warns that if he does manage to escape, then the goddess should be wary of him. Being surrounded in complete darkness, Toka just manages to make some light by supplying his magic bag with magic. Within moments, he is chased by a minotaur and is reminded of how powerless he is and unable to do anything against such a beast. Filled with despair and hatred towards everything and everyone, he launches his paralyzed skill, but to his utmost surprise, the skill works and stops the minotaur dead in its tracks. With so many unanswered questions, Toka takes flight, trying to figure out how his weak spell worked on a higher rank monster. But unfortunately, he runs into another monster. But Paralyze works once more, confirming that the previous time wasn't just a fluke. Memory Talker has now discovered that he can paralyze and poison these monsters. However, his magic power has run dangerously low and is forced to use his body's magic power just to poison the monster. However, there is no time to rest as the previously paralyzed Minotaur has recovered and caught up. So now this side character is forced to fight with no magic power except his will to survive. He does, however, learn that he can't use the same skill twice, but can stack different skills on monsters. Just as he finishes poisoning the Minotaur, he is bombarded by an army of monsters. And the question lies, would he run out first of his natural magic power or the army in front of him? After a seemingly endless wave of paralyzers, but was actually mere seconds, Talker collapses. But just when it seems death is imminent, the poison has finally killed one of the monsters and causes Talker to level up. This restores his vitality and grants him the ability to target multiple opponents at once, and what previously seemed like a dense sentence became a more plausible task, and one by one each monster was poisoned to death and Talker leveled up all three of his abilities. Since Memory Talker first entered the junction, he was finally able to catch his breath and move towards, as now his next problem had arisen. He needs food and water to survive in these ruins, and the battle had left him famished. His first thoughts were to see if the monsters he killed are edible. Using a knife he pulled out of a skeleton, he pries open one of their eyes, only to find out the entire body is made of acid and is not at all in the slightest edible. However, he notices a small glow coming from his leather bag and pours magical energy into it until it finally appears to contain something. To his utmost surprise, falls out beef jerky and cola. This solves his immediate hunger problem, but he doesn't know whether it is a permanent solution or just a one-time thing. Having satisfied his hunger, he now moves from chamber to chamber, killing every single monster in his path and leveling up quite a bit. We see Talker's abusive past and the trauma he received from his parent, but also see his aunt and uncle trying to save him and shower him with kindness. Talker feels no remorse towards the massacre he just caused and instead chooses to move on, and soon encounters other death skeletons that seem to have perished due to lack of food and water or due to injury. He does find some gems that he hopes will be useful later on. Discovers the skeleton of the previous hero of darkness, who was rumored to be the strongest, and it seems that not even he could escape the ruins of disposal. The note he left behind talks about the evil of the goddess, whom seems to be worse than the demon empire. With Memory Talker also filled with vengeance, it seems that the entire verse is run by evil intentions. Amongst the other things he found was a book full of magic spells and a forbidden spell of magic, which he was unable to decipher, and finally a warning to beware of the Soul Eater, which caused the untimely demise of everyone else in the area. It didn't take him long to find the Soul Eater and immediately understood that it was no ordinary opponent, a floating face which attacked before he even had the opportunity to cast a spell. The Soul Eater created entities which resembled the people that he had previously killed, and amuses himself with the disgust and horror of his victims. Memory Talker, unable to attack something that resembled humans so much, seemed to fall into despair, and the Soul Eater cackling in the corner, thoroughly enjoying this battle. However, it was nothing more than an act, and Talker was just waiting for the perfect opportunity in which he lowered his guard so that he could paralyze it. Throughout the whole charade, he never once lowered his left arm, and all that was left was for him to chant the phrase. Memory Talker, a character whom we initially pictured as nothing more than a side character, finally showed his true maniacal colors. The darkness in his heart had finally taken over, and he poisoned the Soul Eater and killed him with ease afterwards. The souls of those who had already perished thanked him, and the previous hero of darkness had one final request: to make the goddess pay. It truly was a battle of evil versus evil.